a brand promise is a critical component of the branding process. Today on Brand for Good, I'm talking about what a brand promise is, why it matters, why you need one, and how to communicate the right promise for your business. Welcome to Brand for Good, the show for purpose-driven leaders who want to build timeless brands and create sustainable impact. I'm Lorraine Sugart, former PR and marketing executive turned founder of the disruptive agency Prosper for Purpose. I've worked with some of the world's most beloved brands, and I'm here to help you elevate your brand identity, visibility, influence, and impact. Are you ready to brand for good? Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Brand for Good. Today, we're exploring the brand promise. We've all made promises in our lives. Maybe it was a pledge to be best friends forever, or maybe it was to love, honor, and cherish. But companies make promises too, just as people do. And when they do, we call that a brand promise. It's aligning with, sure, their company, but also their values and how they relate to their customers. So in short, a brand promise is a statement that communicates to a company's customers what they can expect from that company's products or services. And so it really encompasses but encapsulates the essence of the brand and its commitment to its customers. So in other words, it's a short statement, not an extrapolated one. For example, Coca-Cola's brand promise right now is about delivering moments of happiness. Actually, I have to say that's probably always been their brand promise, back from their Hilltop video from 1971, which is still today one of the most beloved commercials of all time. They're delivering happiness. And so right now, their tagline is taste the feeling. And that kind of embodies the whole promise in that. There is a song, it's lively, it's energizing. And again, it goes back to Coca-Cola's origins, at least since television started, where their promise was all around happiness. And now Apple, I always go to these two because they're two of my favorite brands, but Apple promises innovation. It's a user-friendly interface and experience, and that's reflected in their products and marketing, which are minimalistic and direct. Okay, next let's talk about why a brand promise matters. First of all, it helps a company build trust and loyalty. So a clear brand promise builds trust with your audience. So when a company consistently delivers on its promise, it creates a loyal customer base. How do they know if you're delivering on your promise? Because you've stated what it is and you've built your brand around this promise. Customers return to brands they trust, and they will build loyalty by the fact that they've had the experience they felt was promised to them. And so this is where brand promise is really, really critical. When I talk about brand promise, it is understood that your brand promise is something you intend to deliver on. Anyone can say anything and it might attract people, but once they understand the experience is very different than the promise that was made to them, they will flee to probably your main competition. So to build that trust and loyalty in the market, you have to state your purpose. You have to show how your brand is living up to that. And then through their experience, you have to deliver on that promise. The other reason that brand promise really, really matters to you as a business owner is because it enables you to differentiate yourself in the market. So all our markets are crowded. There isn't one that you would say, oh, there's no competition in this market. So in a crowded market, a strong brand promise that is shared throughout the brand and then delivered on helps differentiate your brand from all of your competitors. It conveys that unique value and positions your company in a specific place in your customer's mind. It creates a niche for you. So now let's talk a little bit about the value of your brand promise. So we want to talk about how when you have a brand promise, it's not just something that you slap on your website and you're done with. You want to be sure that you're consistently applying it to get the maximum value. So what does that mean? A brand promise ensures that you're consistent across all touch points. So your brand promise should be evident even when it's not overtly stated in your paid media, your advertising, your earned media, any places that you show up to speak or you're getting media coverage, your shared media, your social media, and definitely your owned media, which is your website, your email, the things that you essentially own. So that's really important. Just like your purpose is a thread that you're pulling through everything that your company does, you want to make sure that you and every member of your team are consistently exemplifying, sharing, and delivering on your brand promise. It also provides value in that people form an emotional connection. So we go back to the Coca-Cola commercial from 1971, and many of you only know it from maybe studying, looking at old commercials, but that commercial kind of set the stage for what a brand promise could be and how it could be conveyed in a way that made it memorable and emotional. And that's what we want. We want people to have an emotional connection to our company. And we all know by now that people purchase from a company based on emotion. So if they feel that your brand promise is something they align with, just like your values, they're going to emotionally connect with you. And so we want to have a compelling brand promise to create that connection with our customers because we want to build relationships. So remember, again, everything in marketing is about cultivating relationships. So think about brands that you know that have an emotional connection to you. Maybe write a few of them down. Go back and look at their copy and their ads and their websites and see what they're conveying through it. So another one is Nike with their Just Do It message. It's not really a brand promise, but it has that emotional connection. And it implies that with their products that you kind of can just go do it. And so it's not as overt as a lot of other brand promises, but you can get a feel through these three examples that I've shared as to how a brand promise, probably more than anything else, emotionally connects with your prospective customers. And so, why does every company need a brand promise? If you don't have a brand promise already, you may be thinking, well, I have a tagline, I have good copy. I don't know that I need a brand promise. So, what it does for you is it provides a strategic focus and it can help you guide decision making, especially around your client services. So if we know we're supposed to be inspiring happiness, then we're going to be sure that our advertising and our messaging is really around that. We're going to be clear in the content that we're producing is joyful and inspires that kind of thing. So it gives you that strategic focus that you get to make decisions from. Is this going to help us further our image and our place in people's minds and hearts? The other thing it does is help you maintain your brand identity and ensure that the actions that you take support the brand's core values. So last week in the last episode, episode 105, I talked a lot about core values, how to develop core values for your brand. I gave you a PDF that you could get that would help you narrow your focus and identify your brand core values. Your brand core values definitely impact your promise. And you really want to be sure that all the decisions that you're making in how you represent your business are aligning with your purpose, your vision, your mission, and your values. And your brand promise comes out from those. Everything is in alignment. Everything makes sense. When people look at your values, they can say, oh, it makes sense that this is their brand promise, right? And so, what does that do? It helps your customers understand what to expect. And in that way, makes it clear what you stand for. And it reduces any uncertainty that they might have if they're looking at, let's say, Coke and Pepsi. Of course, it's going to come down to what is my taste preference, but there's already going to be that representation in their mind that Coke's the classic and Pepsi's the, younger sibling or the cousin who is very competitive. So think about your customer expectations based on your services. What do they expect from you? And what is that clear, concise message that you can put forward as your brand promise, regardless of what they purchase from you? And then the other thing that your brand promise does is it serves as another, in addition to your values, benchmark for measuring your performance and accountability within the company. And so when we think about companies who have benefited from delivering on their promise, we think of the companies that I've also mentioned, but then there's also Amazon. Whether you love or hate Amazon, their brand promise has always been centered around convenience. It's expanded to their huge selection of inventory, but it's really around the fact that you can go online, purchase pretty much anything and everything, and have it delivered in 1 to 2 days. By consistently delivering on this promise, they have become the go-to platform for online shopping, period. They have immense customer loyalty and they dominate the market in online shopping, period. And so they went from selling books and promising convenience there to now delivering pretty much everything. So now I want to just talk for a minute about the hazards of when companies do not deliver on their brand promise. So again, talked a lot about it's not just about choosing the brand promise that you're going to make, it's also about how you deliver on it. So that really has to be part of any conversation, whether it's just you and you're writing down how you're going to deliver on your promise, or it's you and assistant, or it's you and 50 employees. Incorporating that into your culture, into your focus, into your plans is just so, so important. So we can look at a couple examples of where brands were not able to deliver on their promise. And again, giving companies the benefit of the doubt, we want to think that companies don't intentionally deceive people, but we can look at a couple examples from recent years where companies did not deliver on their promise. So, first one that comes to mind is Volkswagen with their emissions scandal. So, they were promoting environmentally friendly cars, but people found out that there were problems with their emissions. So, they were actually not only not doing what they promised, but they were pretty extreme the other way. And this caused a huge breach of trust between Volkswagen and their loyal customers who went back over and over and over to buy their next vehicle. And so when you don't deliver on your promise, people look at it as you've broken a trust. You've broken a promise. You've broken their trust in you. And it can lead to significant reputation damage, and it can cause financial loss. And so you look at from, I think a few decades ago at another company, Tylenol, where they had a crisis and they instead of recalling the Tylenol bottles that they thought were tainted, they did a wide and thorough and complete recall. And instead of that mistake and that problem that they experienced becoming the undoing of years of positive customer loyalty, instead, it enhanced the loyalty because customers knew that they could then trust Tylenol to do the right thing when and if a mistake was made. So, thinking about those two companies and how they handled their situations will give you some insight into how important not only delivering on your promise at the best you can, but also how to deal with issues that may arise, whether you don't deliver on your promise and there's a stumble, or when someone thinks you haven't delivered on your promise. Dealing with things head on, apologizing if there's been a mistake made, and telling what you'll do differently is very, very important. Okay, hopefully I've convinced you by now that you want to write or revisit your company's brand promise. Now, I want to talk about how to write your company brand promise. So you start by identifying your core values, which I took you through that whole process last week. If you didn't have a chance to catch that episode, go back and do that. You want to think about what principles guide your company. So, what do you value? And how does that translate into how you take care of your customers? Understand your customer expectations. What do they expect from your company? Then you want to narrow down on your promise and make sure that it is clear, concise, and compelling. The 3 C's I always stress with copy. So we want it to be easy to understand. You don't want to use industry jargon. You don't want to use long words or complicated statements. You want it to be simple and clear. You want it to be something that you can deliver on comfortably. So under promise and over deliver, but the promise needs to be aspirational enough that people are like, wow, that's really cool. Like, how does Coca-Cola deliver happiness? It's aspirational, right? So aspirational, but possible. Make sure that you can consistently meet or exceed your promise by making sure that it's part of your company operations. How do we do this? Okay, next, we want to make sure that you align with your brand's unique selling proposition or your positioning in the market. So, what makes you unique? It's that combination of your purpose and your values and what you offer and what you really zero in on. So, maybe it is exemplary service, white glove attitude. Maybe it's transparency. Maybe it's that combination of factors that you can articulate in about 5 words. So think about, for example, Southwest Airlines promises low fares and nothing to hide. And that aligns with their unique place in the market of being a low cost carrier. They used to be considered the low cost carrier, but now there are others in the market. Hopefully, this helps. So, the last thing that I'll say about writing your brand promise is you want it to be somewhat memorable, right? And so we think about Coca-Cola, deliver happiness. We think about some of the other brands that we've talked about. We think about what we can do that not too many other businesses can do, and we make that our brand promise. So finally, and kind of just wrapping that up, I want you to remember that a brand promise turns into taglines on occasion, but it's actually more than that. And I gave some examples of brand promises versus tagline, but it's really a commitment to your customers and part of that brand positioning. And it's also where you stake your flag in the ground, that is saying, plant your flag in the ground and say, this is what we promise to people in our experience, to people that we work with. Remember that it's crucial for building trust, for differentiating your company in the market, for being consistent in your marketing, and for driving an emotional connection with the people that you want to serve. So, understanding and crafting a strong brand promise is essential for any business owner. It's a key step in building a successful and enduring brand. And that's what I want for all of you. So spend some time going back, looking at your values, and think about your brand promise. And don't forget to look at some of the other brands that you really love and analyze their brand promises. How do they communicate it? And how do they live up to it? I hope that that was helpful to you. If you have any more questions about brand promise or any other aspects of brand that you'd like to hear me discuss, email us at connect@prosperforpurpose.com. Until then, I'll see you next time on Brand for Good. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Brand for Good show. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leave a review so other purpose-driven leaders can find this valuable content. To learn more about building a brand for good, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more resources and information on all the ways you can work with us.